As an anime only when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen, I try to stay away from anything manga related online. However, when it came to the Higuruma hype, it was everywhere. I didn't understand the hype at first, but after watching season 3 episode 8, I now understand. What's up everyone, after a 2-week break, Jujutsu Kaisen season 3 returned with episode 8, Tokyo Colony number 1 part 2. And in this episode, we saw the introduction of 2 new characters, Higuruma and Reggie. We saw a backstory between Yuji and Rin and Amai when they were in middle school. Megumi was lured away from Higuruma. Bruh. And finally, we saw Yuji and Higuruma face off at the end of the episode, with Higuruma showing off his freaking domain expansion. Anyways, I want to start off by talking about Higuruma's backstory. As I said at the start of the video, after watching episode 8, I finally understand why fans love this character. Even though we've only seen him in this one episode, that was more than enough to get me invested. He is just so relatable and likable, and we see that through his backstory. Before he lost his faith in the legal system, we see that Higuruma was actually a really chill and positive dude. The episode does a great job of showing us that, with him teasing his co-worker by spinning her chair, or being kind enough to put his jacket over her while she was sleeping. He was someone who genuinely tried his best to achieve the impossible, taking on cases for people who had no one else to rely on. We see this early on when his colleague, Shimizu, meets with one of Higuruma's former co-workers. Through their conversation, she tells her about the case of the 19-year-old drunk driver crashing and injuring someone. However, the driver was forced to drink and drive by his co-worker. Even with almost no evidence on his side, Higuruma was noble enough to fight for a suspended sentence for someone who was mentally and financially struggling. However, this wouldn't work, and once the kid lashed out at him in anger, we could see the toll he was taking. He wasn't a broken man yet, he was just a man trying to do the right thing in a difficult, thankless job of being a defense lawyer in Japan. But being noble in an unfair system eventually cost him his mental state, and we see that clearly during the murderer trial. He successfully saves a man from a false accusation during the first trial, and for a brief moment, we see the only time Higuruma actually smiles. He finally felt like he was achieving the justice he believed in, but when the second trial comes around, the system turns around and sentenced the man to life anyways. It's really tragic because we as the audience already knew he was innocent since Shizumu and Higuruma had found security footage proving he was nowhere near the scene of the crime. Yet, during the second trial, the court completely ignored that evidence. The prosecutors presented no new facts, just absurd claims, and the judge overturned the verdict anyways. In that moment, something inside him broke. Higuruma didn't just lose a case, he lost his faith in the legal system. When his client looks back at him with that look of pure anger and betrayal, Higuruma's internal monologue was devastating. In that moment, he flashes back to the previous case of the drunk driver looking at him with that same hatred. You can see his soul just snapping under the guilt of a rigged, predetermined system. And when you look at the real world aspect, you realize just how hopeless Higuruma's situation actually was. In Japan, the conviction rate is famously over 99%. Once the state decides you're the one, it's basically a mathematical certainty that you're going down. Higuruma wasn't just a lawyer, he was a man trying to beat a system that is literally designed to never lose. He spent his career fighting for the innocent and chasing a justice that he truly believed in. But after consistently slamming into that rigged 99% conviction rate, he finally realized justice in this world was nothing more than a fairy tale. His Shikigami and curse technique awakening was perfectly executed when he demanded everyone to come back for a retrial. It felt so natural because this was the exact moment he realized the justice the judge is providing is total BS. I think this backstory is one of the main reasons people love him so much. It's not just that he's relatable, it's the fact that he's someone who actually tried his best to help others even when he knew he was fighting an impossible battle. We see him put his heart into a system that just doesn't care, and seeing that heart get crushed is what makes him so compelling. Anyways, I want to talk about his character design real quick. I think it's really cool in my opinion. He's the only character we've seen so far with those tiny pupils. Usually when a character is designed that way, it's to show they are completely drained mentally, which is exactly what Higuruma has been through. He has been suffering for so long that his eyes have lost their human light. This backstory was honestly a masterpiece to watch. It bridges the gap from a determined hero to a broken man. I really enjoyed this part of the episode, and before I move on, I just have to talk about the animation real quick. The animation and music elevated this backstory so much. Between the rotoscoping and the anime only scenes, it definitely made the whole sequence feel more real and intense.
最高裁は狭き門。上告はほぼ門前払い。まともに審理されることすら難しい。
Anyways, after Higuruma's backstory, we get another backstory, but this time it's about Yuji's middle school days and his connection to Rin Amai. We see Rin Amai hanging out with a group of delinquents who are ganging up on a helpless student, only for Yuji to interrupt and take down the bullies. This flashback shows us who Rin Amai really is. He wasn't comfortable with the bullying, but he stood by and watched just to avoid becoming a target himself. It highlights a real character trait of someone who recognizes justice but lacks the courage to act on it out of self-preservation. The parallel between Yuji and Rin is actually pretty similar. To me, Rin is essentially the normal version of Yuji. He sees the same injustice Yuji sees, but while Yuji has the strength to stand up and be a hero, Amai is paralyzed by the fear of being targeted. This is why when I saw them part ways in the theaters, it felt so disheartening. Amai is still trying to protect Yuji by telling him to play it safe, while Yuji is already prepared to die to do what's right. They are both cogs in this world, but while Amai is just trying to survive the machine, Yuji is the one brave enough to try and break it. We also got Megumi and Remy meeting Reggie. We didn't see him for that long, so there's nothing too much to say, but he seems pretty interesting and he might be a sorcerer connected to Kenjaku, which is pretty cool. The episode then shifts to Yuji meeting Higuruma, who is sitting fully dressed in a bathtub. Even if he hadn't seen his backstory, you'd assume this guy's insane because who in the world bathes like this? But this interaction is incredibly compelling because we see exactly how much he's changed since the murderer trial. There is a massive shift in his morality as he went from a man who lived to save the innocent to someone who, while acknowledging the Culling game is messed up, just wants to sit back and become the system. This just hits so hard because it shows that Higuruma hasn't necessarily become evil. He's just exhausted of the previous crappy legal system. He spent his whole life fighting for a justice that didn't exist, so now he's decided to just embrace the rules of the Culling games. He's stopped trying to be a hero and settled for being a judge, and seeing that transformation from the man who once smiled at a not guilty verdict is just heartbreaking. The interaction finishes with Higuruma unleashing his Shikigami and his freaking domain expansion. I've gotta say, this was one of the most nonchalant domain expansions I've remember seeing, since he did it so casually. The way the team animated this entire confrontation was amazing. Between the awesome creative camera angles and the lighting shifting to a red color when he talked about punishing people, that red shift visually symbolized his transition from a man of law to an executioner. Also, in my opinion, the music fit the vibe perfectly as well, which definitely elevated the tension of the whole scene. The only issue for some might be the neon lights switching so much. Me and the One Punch Man Season 3 community definitely have not forgotten about how much they spammed those neon filters in that season. While it personally didn't affect the scene for me here, I could definitely imagine someone out there being bothered. Anyways, this episode closes off with Kenjaku meeting some people who I assume at the moment to be the higher ups in Jujutsu High, but even if it's not, this scene looks pretty interesting and will probably lead to something more exciting later on. Alrighty, that was my thoughts about this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about this episode. In my opinion, this was definitely my favorite episode so far of Season 3. The music, the animation, the camera angles, the road discovering, like, oh my god, it was just so good. But yeah, I'm officially out. Have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.